Hello, hello, and welcome to another edition of Spindle TV. One day later, right? So our normal public classes are Thursday night at 8 o'clock, but we had to shift to tonight because I was in the process of setting up a new PC. If any of you were with me last Thursday night when we were trying to work on that, special heart box, which we're working on again tonight, you'll know that stream was terrible. It was buffering. It was in and out, and about an hour or so into the stream, it just died. It just canceled out, right? So the that really prompted me to I said I had to draw the line, and I had to get a PC. And so I was setting it up and everything. I kind of waited till the last minute. So I ended up having to shift my Spindle TV exclusive members class to Thursday, and then our Thursday class to tonight. So thanks for joining with me. We're not going to have as many viewers as we normally would have because it's Friday night. Some people are, they still do stuff and everything. They're not like, us fine folk that live for woodworking and live for Spindle TV videos. No, I'm just kidding. So I'm really happy. The one thing that we should take from tonight is we should have a nice, clean, clear stream. And if for any reason you have a low resolution on your view, because I am streaming at 1080p, in your window on your screen, click the little gear icon under the video and change your resolution, or your what's it called? Is it called resolution? Change your from 1080p to or 720p to 1080p, or whatever you need to do. Sometimes YouTube will lower the resolution just by default. All right, so with that being said, we had such a failure last week. We're going to attempt again. Now, we're not going to start from the very beginning. We're going to do a quick recap of what we did last week, and then we're going to start working on, continue on this week on that lid and everything. We'll talk about some of the changes off screen that I made in the design, and after I went back and looked at it, we're going to talk about, some adjustments I made and why I made those adjustments and everything. So if you were with me last week and all, thanks for coming back this week. All right. That being said, let's stop talking and let's get into it. We're going to switch over to my other camera, which should be camera 2. There we go. And let's put me down in the bottom left corner, kind of get rid of that. All right. I believe that's all I got to do for that. Hello. All right. So as you see on the screen, we have our heart box design. Now, keep in mind, I'll make this file available if I've had a few people requesting, to see if they could have it and everything. And I have no problem with that at all. But first and foremost, I got to make it and get it out to very special young lady who had her 21st birthday last week. And of course, with the screw up, I didn't get the box done. So there we go. All right. Let's first take a quick recap, if you will. And bear with me one second. I need to click one button on my software setup. There we go. Don't need to see all that other stuff. All right. Big shout out to all my Spindle TV exclusive members. It's good to see you here. Ron Bishop, JR, David Heineke, and Roger Brown. Let's see here. I think that's a few. Yep. All right. So let's take a quick recap, if you will, as to what we did last week and what we were working on tonight to finish up. But we started off with making the vectors for the box. We have the outside vector that, let me turn off the guideline here. We have an outside vector that's going to be just the general shape of the box for both the base and the lid. We have an inside vector which represents the pocket that's going to be. And this particular box has two sections to it with a little wall in between. So, excuse me, we have a smaller pocket area. Sorry, we have a smaller pocket area. And then we have a larger pocket area so that when we come over and look at, excuse me, I don't know why I'm choking. I'm getting choked up here. All right. Sorry about that. I have a little bit of a cold, so we'll try to keep that at a minimum so it doesn't irritate you. Okay, so if we take a look at the base of the box, we have our main pocket that is going to be, I believe I have it at a 1/2 inch deep. We'll take a look here in just a second. I'm going to be making this out of a really nice piece of teak. It's got some beautiful, I wish I had it in here. It's a real big panel that I have glued up, but I'm going to be making it out of that. And it's got a really, really nice look to it and everything. So on that, we have, let's get rid of this outer waist here. This box, the base of the box that we created last week, we have a pocket cut that is doing the entire pocket except for the two walls here, except for the wall in the middle. And that wall in the middle has a little pocket cut that kind of reduces it down so it's not at the same level as the top rim. Because my lid, which we're going to be working on tonight, is going to be a fitted lid, which means it has a little lip on the inside that fits on the outer edge, or the inner edge, should I say, of this pocket. So it's a nice fitted lid. I'm not doing any hinge or anything like that. It's just going to be a really nice, hopefully if I do my tool pass right, it'll be a really nice friction fitted lid and everything. And so last week we got through the tool pass of just making this very simple tool pass. My main pocket is actually 3/4 of an inch deep versus a 1/2 inch. Like I said, it's 3/4 of an inch deep. And then the wall right here, this wall is stepped down 1/4 of an inch. So the wall is only a 1/2 inch tall. And that means that I have 1/4 of an inch from the top of this box down. That's going to be plenty of room for my lip to fit into. And so my lip doesn't bottom out. My lip is only going to be 3/16 on that inside of the lid. All right, so now we are going to switch over to the top here. And on the top, let's take a look at some of the things we have going on here. I have, from last week's vectors, I've changed them up this week. Let's go into our component tree. Component tree is where all the model parts and the components are and everything. Let's turn them off for a minute, and we'll talk about them a little bit, kind of one at a time. But on the lid, basically the lid is the same vectors as the base copied over to this other sheet. And there's some new vectors as well. And so we have a ribbon that's, I'm going to call the band that's going to go across the top of the heart, the ribbon. And then there's going to be a bow on it. Now I had streamers coming off the bow, but last week, or, you know, when we were doing it the first time around, I had these really generic looking kind of like arc shape bows. And I didn't, you know, when I really got to looking at it, I thought, you know, it doesn't really look that good, those arc shapes. So we're going with a little bit of a wiggly line here that's going to be modeled up and stuff. Now, this bow is going to be kind of a three-dimensional bow. It's going to be 3D card anyway, but I'm talking about three-dimensional. There's going to be other parts that are going to get attached to the top of it. And I'm going to share with you this information from Popular Woodworking that I think is a very cool project concept, and what y'all should do, you know, what y'all could do with boxes and things. In the Popular Woodworking article, they're using a scroll saw to create the parts for this bow, ribbon, whatever you want to call it. And we're going to be using the CNC. So the one thing that I, if you recall, for the ones that were with me last week, because the top of the heart has an arc to it, the ribbon was following that arc, but it was falling off the sides and creating a weird drop and everything. And then when I increased the height of the ribbon and everything, it created these little arches on the ends instead of a nice angle going this way and kind of rounding over the edges. Let me see if I can stay within camera shot here. Instead of kind of going and rounding over the edges, it created this kind of like up kick on the ends. And you saw me last week, I went into sculpting and I was trying to sculpt the edges to bring it down and all that stuff. And that was the wrong approach. So tonight we're going to be talking about the right approach and what we did to correct what I was thinking on the fly last week. I really wasn't putting two and two together and everything. But before we do, let me take you to an article by Popular Woodworking, and I'm going to post the link in the chat. Copy this and paste it there. Now, this link is from Popular Woodworking. I don't know if it's a safe link, if you have antivirus and all that, because there's a lot of ads and stuff on there. But it is a Popular Woodworking link, you know, and I feel that they're pretty, you know, safe. You know, never trust links, you know, in general. You know, I have my Norton didn't throw up any red flags or anything, but, you know, just always be safe because there's all kinds of ads on this page, and ads sometimes, you know, come with weird stuff. But anyway, the bow box. And you see this beautiful three-dimensional bow right here. This is a bow, yes, but my bow is like a bow tie, right? It's just the two-sided bow, but it's going to have these three-dimensional pieces on it on the top that we're going to attach afterwards and everything. So we're going to be cutting out these loops. Now, in this article with Popular Woodworking, they go through the steps on making this, and I think it's a phenomenal technique for adding this kind of element to a box and everything. So definitely read that article. But they're using a scroll saw, and they glue up layered wood with different colors. In this case, they have cherry and maple, right? And then the scroll saw is cutting out these parts, and then they're going through and they're sanding them and all, and like kind of rounding off and all that stuff, and then they're assembling it. This is a public file, so it's you know, it's out there for the public to see. So I'm just sharing the information. But so YouTube, don't yell at me. But the parts are, you know, they're kind of cut out and assembled, and they end up making this box. So through the glue up, like I said, it's just a very thin glue up of whatever you want. I'm not going to do a glue up of different colors. Mine's going to be just one color because I'm going to cut the board out on the CNC. But with this glue up, it then, after the box is assembled, well, I'm just zipping past this because I just want to kind of talk about this. But these ribbon parts are then cut down to size, and they're all fitted together and glued together. And the key thing here is they're putting a finish on before everything is finished assembled. So everything is getting a finish on it, like a poly finish and stuff like that. They're using shellac hair spray, Zinsser spray shellac in there and all, but they're using a template to scrape away the finish just in the areas where the bows are going to make contact and everything. And that's the final of the article. But you should really take a look at this article. I give Popular Woodworking great credit for this. It was an article that was written by, let me go back up to the top here, Kevin Southwick, and this was 2020, but great looking bow. Really just a really pretty bow. And that bow, the two sides there, that's what we're going to be making for my bow, and they're going to get glued. It's just my bow is just going to be 2 instead of 4, right? That kind of thing. And also, and we're going to be cutting it out of the CNC. But my parts are going to attach here. And there's going to be that, excuse me, that third part where that goes in the middle of the two. So it's going to be the 2 outside ones and then the 1 middle one, right? So that's just going to be my simple, like a bow. And I thought about it. I thought, man, should I do the 4 one, you know, the bigger bow and all that? And no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I just want my 2 little pieces. But from the get-go, I had the plan of doing that 3-dimensional where the part sticks up, you know, and everything. And we're going to be cutting those pieces out of, you know, the CNC and everything. And I think it's just a nice touch. And we want to make sure that our parts for our ribbon are fairly thin. We're using a router bit. I'll be using an 1/8 inch router bit to cut the parts versus like they're using a scroll saw in that article, which can really get down into the points and everything. But I'm going to be using an 1/8 inch bit to cut out the parts, and want to make the parts thick enough that, because you got to sand them, you know, and round off the edges by hand and stuff, you know, there's not going to be a whole lot of room for working with any kind of router table or router bit round over or nothing like that. So everything is going to be, you know, a little touch up sanding and everything, and then go from there. Now, on this heart, I have a multiple sets of vectors going on here. So I have the outside, which is going to be the final profile cut. We have the inside, which is going to really doesn't play a role on the outside of my box here. It's on the inside. So this is going to be copied to the other side. And if I flip over to the other side, I believe it's already there, which it is. Wonderful. I don't need to do anything more than that for right now. I have the, let's call it a bow, the bow itself. I have the ribbon. I'm calling this the ribbon that goes across. And then I have 2 additional vectors on the left and the right side. Now, if I turn off all of the layers for a moment and we only focus on these outside side vectors, let's do that. These little side vectors, these are what's going to make that ribbon when it comes over. We're gonna build this model up or show the steps of it being built up, and you're gonna see that the why we have these 2 little vectors here, and these vectors are going to end up being used in a process called a 2-rail sweep. and which means we have two lines, our rails, our drive rails, and then we have a profile. In this case, my profile is a slight angle outward from the heart. That plays a role, and that's going to be swept between those two lines to create the shape. Now let's go back and let's turn on all the vectors. And let's actually switch over to the 3D view. And let's switch back over to our component tree. Now you'll notice on the left here, I have two levels, if you will. Think of them like layers, but they're levels in the component tree. And when you have multiple levels, the items in one level, depending on what that level is set at, interact with the items in the other level in a certain way. And so what I mean by that is all of the items in, let's say, the bow level here, all of the items within the bow level, they interact with each other, okay? And in this case, you see this little yellow U-shaped icon. That stands for merge. So the combined mode is merge. So all of these parts are merging together with themselves. And the same thing with the heart layer. All of these three items here, the curve and the base, the little meat that's underneath the curve, and those little side ramps, those little vectors on the side, they're merging with each other. Now, independently, these two things are merging with themselves, but the level is adding to the level below it. So the combined mode of the entire level is not a merge, it's an add. And when you add one model to another or one component to another, it takes on the shape of whatever's underneath that. And to better visualize what I mean by that is if we were to take a bed sheet, a thin bed sheet, and drape it over a car, that sheet would not stay flat and rigid. It would actually just contour and take on the shape of the car that's underneath it. And that's what happens when a component, one component is added to another. It softens up and takes on the shape of whatever's underneath it. So all of these items are merging with each other, but as a whole, they are being added to the shape underneath, so that way they follow the curve. So let's take a close look at that. Let's turn on the heart model itself. And on the heart model, let's go over here and let me close that proper. Okay. Let's turn off the vectors so they're not distracting to the eye here. And one by one, I'm going to add these. So let me turn these off one by one. Okay. Now, if we take a look at this, this first initial shape is just the curve of the heart, right? The lid curve, that little nice curve. And it was created within the software of using a curved profile, a curved shape. We did a nice, I believe it was a 25 or 30 degree angle on there. So it's a nice subtle curve. And below it, the wood below it is called the base height. Now bear with me a second. Someone is texting. I want to make sure that it's not somebody trying to get my attention, like the stream is canceled or something like that. All right. No, it's not. Let's see what we have here. Sky Ewing from Maine makes nice bows as well. Sky Ewing. I'll have to take a look at Sky. So when you have a component that you create that creates a composite model, there's base. So it's the straight meat or wood that's underneath it. And then you have shape, anything that's got, shape or contour, of different levels and everything above that. And so this side view here, all this straight wood underneath is the base, and then the curve itself of this heart is the shape. And so we have a, coming back to our component tree, from there, we did, I did a 2-rail sweep to create a left ramp and a right ramp off to the side here. Now, I'm going to leave the ramps turned off for a minute. I'm going to show you what they look like without the hearts, just so you can see. We'll do the left one since we're looking at the left side of the screen right here. Let's turn on that left one. And if we look, if we zoom in here, let it refocus. Let it catch up to itself. There you go. That piece follows those two lines. And if we were looking at the vectors in the 2D view, and let's turn off all the layers but the 2-rail sweep. So the shape, the profile is running between these two lines, which ultimately creates this wedge-shaped part here. And so that shape is, coming down. Now, the height of the highest peak of the longest point and the height of the lower point plays a big role because of the curve of that heart. The ribbon and everything has a 1/4-inch thickness to it, and it's laying over that heart. And so this high peak here has to match that, ribbon, so that at a certain point, it's got to match the side of the heart so the ribbon can lay on top of it. And then it has an angle so the ribbon can follow that angle nicely. Now, if we turn on the bow itself without any curve or anything to it, the bow has this shape of the ribbon, excuse me, which runs all the way out past the edge of the heart. If we look at the vectors, so you can see that in the vectors, let's go up and turn on the vectors here. This ribbon, this is this vector right here, goes all the way out past the heart and it goes out by 1/4 inch because that ribbon is 1/4 inch thick. So when imagine it wrapping around the side, it's going to be the same thickness on the side. If it's 1/4 inch going across the top, it's 1/4 inch down the sides. So it extends beyond the heart by that 1/4 inch. Well, because the bow level is taking on the shape of what's underneath it, when we're looking at it in the 3D view, currently right now, nothing's underneath it. There's nothing checked, nothing turned on. So the bow is flat, right? And all of the parts are merging, they're blending, they're keeping their shape, and they're blending with one another. So if we look at this in kind of a front view, so we'll look at it kind of a front view here. If I can get my, oops, that's the back view. There we go. So if we were looking at this from the front view, we're going to have the base of this ribbon. And then we got these little streamers. I changed the shape on the streamers just to give them a little bit of character and everything. And then we have this bow. And so it's all flat right now. So when we come in here and add just the heart, I'm not going to do the left and the right side ramp yet, but when we add the heart underneath it, that curve, this shape is going to take on that curve that's underneath it. It's going to drape over that heart, right? Well, on the edges here, that 1/4 inch on each side, there's nothing there. It's empty. So that ribbon just drops, and it drops down to its 1/4 inch height because that's how tall it is. You know, that's exactly how tall it is. But there's nothing underneath to support it. So it just falls right down to the side. And so you see that step down. And what I tried to do last week was I thought, oh, well, we'll just make it a merge so it keeps its stiff, edge. And then we'll just build up the base height so it shows above the heart. And what ended up happening is on this edge here, it stayed stiff, but it made it ramp up on the end. So it was actually going up instead of kind of angling down, like a nice flow and everything. So it really didn't, work out that well. So I need a little platform, if you will, underneath the ribbon on this outer edge here, so it has something to follow. And so if I turn on the left side ramp that I created with the 2-rail sweep, you'll notice in just a second when it regenerates that the base, that ramp becomes the base underneath. Give it just a second to regenerate. There you go. It took a minute. Darn, took a minute. But now that ramp is, the ramp angle played a big role. Now the ramp angle, when that highest peak was level with the ribbon and everything, the angle of the ramp allows it to flow like it's a natural curve, like it's a natural flow. Now, when these edges get softened up, we'll have a nice little round over on the edge here when we run a smoother along the edge when we smooth it out. And so we'll have a nice little, it'll just be a nice little round over coming over. And we don't have to add a smoothing in the actual model. We could do that with sanding if we wanted to, and that kind of stuff as well too. But that little wedge underneath was at the right height of the base. So when the ribbon continued past the heart, it had a platform to rest on so it doesn't drop down. And then so if we go and look at the other side, that drop down, right? If we turn on the right side ramp, which the angle is facing, the appropriate way over there, and it was just a mirror, right, of those two little profiles. But with that right side, that will elevate that right side. And then we will have let that catch up there. We'll have a nice curve of the ribbon, and then it flows right off the side there, and down that side. So over the edge, that 1/4 inch, 1/4 inch, and 1/4 inch down on the side edge and everything. So that's going to be that. And then in the center here, I have this part. I have this part right here that is going to be kind of a platform for that middle bow. So we're going to have the two sides, and then we're going to have the one that gets glued in on the center and everything. So that's where we are as of right now. That's kind of where we were when the stream canceled last week. And it kind of just canceled and shut down. So now we're going to continue with, we've got to make the inside, we got to do all of our smoothing. We've got to make the inside of the bottom of the heart, the little recess in the lip. And then we have to create, I'm going to create like a little pocket, just a little recess and everything to hollow up the inside and everything. I don't think I'm going to do any V carving on the inside or anything like that on the back side, you know, on that little pocket that I'm going to be making. But it could be done. If someone wanted to have an inscription V carved in, we could do that, and I'll show you that here. So at this point on side one, all of my parts here are in 2 separate levels, right? So now I don't want to bake or merge all of my, bake is like baking a cake, egg, flour, water, whatever. When we bake it, it bakes into that cake. You can't unbake it. So I want to keep all of my parts separate and in their levels. They're what I consider my originals. So if anything needs to change, I can go back to my originals, make small adjustments and everything. But I do want to make one complete component that I can work with from this stage forward. And if I have to backtrack, I can always back up into the original. So how you do that is in Aspire, we would come in here and we would create a component from the visible model. And that's a draft. Let me close that. We create a component from the visible model. And what that does, it's going to make a brand new model of what you see right here. And I can go into that component tree and I'm going to create a new level. This level, I'll rename it and I'll just call it my let's see here, my heart lid V1. We'll just do that. That's fine. And I'm going to drag that copy of that visible model up into that level. And I'm going to turn off the levels that are below it. And they're there for safekeeping, right? So I can turn those off. I can go ahead and minimize those categories. And so my originals are tucked away in there. And now I have a model of this heart that's been baked together. And let me explain to you why you would bake something and everything. When we bake a single component or multiple components together, we do that so that any additional changes that we plan on making or doing, any additional add-ons or changes that we plan on doing from now, we are doing them on this kind of like completed component versus on these dynamically on the individual components. And so if I were to better explain that, let's go here and let's go into the properties. And let's click on the question mark, which is the help menu, so that it opens up the manual, because in the manual they word it so eloquently to where it makes sense. Let's go down to bake. So we come down here to bake, and basically here's what they say about that. Sometimes it's useful to apply a component's dynamic properties permanently. All those individual parts and pieces, all those dynamic properties, bake them together permanently, so it's one solid piece. And one example of where this is useful is so that any further dynamic changes, any add-ons or additions that we plan on doing, those can be applied on top of the previous ones, you know, and we're kind of building, we're stair-stepping. We have all these individual parts baked together into one thing. And now that I have a cake, I'm going to add my icing. I'm going to add all my little flowers and flourishes and all that stuff with the icing and everything. And I'm going to build on top of that cake. I wouldn't build my icing and all those little flowers and furnishes and garnishes and all that on top of my eggs, oil, flour, mixture. I got to bake the cake first. I got to bake it together and then add the next phase, if you will. So that's why one would bake. Not really required, but sometimes it's the smart way to go. All right. Now, the key important thing is here, I didn't want to select all of my parts and bake them together. And then, because when you bake a cake, you can't unbake it, right? You can't turn it back into flour, eggs, and oil. You just can't reverse that technology. So if I need to step back and change something, my originals are still here in these turned off levels that I could go back and change them. And all I would do is, if I had to make changes, I would delete my current model, go back, make my changes, and rebake that remake a copy of it and bake it and everything, and adapt those changes that I have to make. But if I baked everything together without making that copy, then I would lose that. Now here's the downfall. Being able to create a visible copy or a copy of the visible model, that's only a feature available in desktop or in Aspire. It's not available in desktop and Pro. And being able to bake multiple models together into one, the desktop and Pro allows you to bake an individual component, but not multiple components and everything. So you would have to kind of work with the parts. If you have desktop or Pro, you'd have to work with the parts unbaked or bake them independently and everything, as you go. You wouldn't be able to make a copy unless you have Aspire. So I need to bring that out there, because if you don't have Aspire, you wouldn't be able to do that. Okay, make this copy. All right, so now for this copy, I'm going to apply a smoothing filter to smooth all my edges over. And this is where the smoothing comes in. Now, I could do this with my sculpting brush. I could go through and sculpt the edges and smooth them and all. I'm just going to apply it as a whole. So I do not want to add anything when I'm smoothing. So I want to preserve my transparency, meaning whatever's empty on my sheet and heart, keep it empty. I want to preserve my transparency. And I'm just going to lightly add in, slide that slide bar ever so gently over, just to smooth off these sharp edges and everything. So we'll do that. Just a little bit. I don't really want to, I'm trying to nudge it. I'm just trying to bring it over. Let that regenerate and update. I just want to soften those edges, and I'll zoom in. Let me zoom in here. My graphics are a little slow tonight because I'm still kind of still kind of working with streaming PC. The new PC is doing the streaming, and I'm still working on the old one until I fully transition to where this one. I've had this computer. I've had it for 15 years, so I haven't quite retired it yet. The new one is handling the stream. It's handling all the heavy lifting and everything, so I don't buffer and any of that stuff. But I'm doing my designing and stuff still over here. All right. I think by Monday I'll be fully transitioned over to where this computer will retire. It'll go in a closet somewhere. All right, so just slowly lading. I don't want to add too much, smoothing to it. I just want to bring that slider over to where it just kind of softens up that sharp edge here and everything. Anything else beyond that, I can do with sanding if I need to or anything like that. I think I'm going to leave it. Give it just a second. All right, let's go ahead and click OK. Just softened up, just a slight round over. I mean, just it's probably like a 1/16 of an inch round over basically on that. And then I'm going to hit save. It's updating the model with that smoothness. And again, if I wanted to, I could go in and I could sculpt and stuff with it with a smoothing brush with the sculpting and all. I just want to slightly just soften that up. And I've done that. So now we're ready to flip this thing over. So on side 2, the exciting part about this is, of course, getting the parts cut out that are going to be, we'll be drawing the vectors in just a moment for the ribbon, the parts that get cut out for the upper parts. I think it's going to look really neat. I think it's going to look really nice. Let's switch over to side 2. Let's switch back to the 2D view. Okay. Now on side 2, on our heart and everything, we have our vectors. We don't need anything else really at this point turned on except for layer 1, which is my outside vector, and then my inside vector. Now all that's happening here is I'm going to add another vector this is the rim. This is the lip right here. Okay. And it sits on that edge. But then there's going to be a small piece that goes inside. You know, it goes down 3/16 of an inch inside. Now, this is my pocket right here of the base. So I need to create the vector for my little lip. So this heart is going to get offset inward. And I want this wall, it's going to be, probably just about an 1/8 inch thick. So we're going to go 0.125. We're offsetting inward and we're creating that little wall. Now, when the pocket cut gets cut, I need a clean edge here. So I need the bit to be able to go past this outside edge when it's reducing that level right there. So I need this to be offset outward and just a small amount so the bit can just go past the edge and give me a nice clean edge. So I'm going to go a 1/16 of an inch there outward. Okay. Now the vector here and the vector here become my pocket vectors. So let's create the tool path for that. And it's going to be a pocket cut. And like I said, my lip is going to go down into the box by 3/16 of an inch. So that's how my pocket, this little recess pocket right here is going to be 3/16 of an inch. Now, in order to create the toolpath, I've got to fix an error. The software is bringing me up to an error. And the error was that my model, because of the top side, the bow and the curve and the arc and all that stuff, it exceeds the thickness of the material that I initially set up for this. And I knew it would because this needs to be set up for a 2-inch piece of material. And I've got 2 1-inch pieces that are going to get glued together to make this lid. Now, the whole lid in itself and the edges and all is not going to be 2 inches, but that bow and the ribbon and everything, that added height to everything. So that's what, you know, we're taking in account. So let that 2-inch reset there. Okay. Now the now that the let me talk out loud here. Now that the material, that's the word. Now that the material thickness has been corrected in its size and everything, I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And then now it'll let me make my toolpath. So my toolpath, like I said, is going to be 3/16, 0.1875. Here I've got plenty of room to use a 1/4 inch end mill. So I'm going to do that. 1/4 inch end mill can fit between those 2 vectors. And this is going to be my lid outer recess. That's what I'll call it, 0.25 end mill. We'll calculate that. All right, we'll preview that visible toolpath, and that will go in and just create that recess. Now, the inside of my lid, ladies and gentlemen, right? The inside of my lid, if I just do a pocket cut on the inside vector here, create a little recess, a little relief of material, if you will, I have a choice. I can either just do a flat pocket so that inside is just flat, or I could create a profile shape matching my outer profile, the outer curve. My inner curve could match, could be a recess to match that. And I think for aesthetics and everything, that would look the best than just a flat part. Now, either one of the 2 options, if I was doing an inscription, you know, in there, my inscription probably would read "better late than never," because it's been like 9 years I was supposed to make this box for someone, you know. And that would probably be my inscription, affectionately meaning, you know, at least I made it, right? But if I wanted to do an inscription, I could do it if it was flat or if it's curved or what have you. So that being said, my inner vector is going to be on the design tab. It is going to be a curved profile. We're going to go with a 20-degree curve, and I'm going to go the full 100%, but it's going to be a negative. It's going to be a subtract. So it's going to remove that material in that curve shape. Let me look up and let's see what we got here. Ronnie Probert, yes, you can bake in VCarve Pro, but individual components. So when you're in the properties, when you're in your component tree and you double click on any component that's in there, you will see the bake button, and I'll show you where that is in just a second. I'll show you what it looks for. So this is going to be my inside lid, inside center. We'll call it that. And click apply. Okay. Close. All right, if we go to the component tree really quickly to answer Ronnie's question, when you click on any component in your and you're in the properties, let me get out of that selection there. Yeah. Bear with me just a second. Let's right click on it and go to the properties. I kept wanting to open the tool up. I want to just go into the properties. And of course, let's really quickly switch over to side one. When you click on the properties, there we go, component properties, you'll have a bake button right there. You just click that to bake that component and everything. All right, let's switch back over to side two. All right, now let's look at this in the 3D view. In order to see it, we have to close this off. So inside that center of that heart, you'll have that curve, right? That curve inside there. So when we're looking at this as kind of a whole, you're going to have, let me turn off the red. You have your outside, and then you'll have when the lid comes off. Now, there's going to be a lip. You don't see the lip right now, but you'll have this inside curve right here. Now, the lip I'm actually making with the tool path on that outside pocket and everything. I'm making the lip with the tool path and all, but we could absolutely, in Aspire, I could build the lip up if I wanted to create it here, but this material is going to get milled away 3/16, and it's going to be that that fitted lid. Now on that come on, Lainey, you can get it out, you can spit it out on that bottom side of the lid. We're going to have a lip, and you'll see that when we create the tool path. All right, so this has the nice little, let me see if I can turn it in a way that I love this new die, but takes some getting used to. So you can see that curved recess on the inside. I just think that'll look better. And again, like I said, I could do an inscription now, depending on how thick my material is, and depending on how much material I'm removing on the inside and versus the outside curve and all that stuff. That really plays a role with how much material I have left to do a V carve, right? You know, so we don't want to use a very narrow V bit. Or we need to set a flat depth, a limit, so we don't cut through the top side with a V carve of our whatever our inscription and stuff is. Now on this particular one, let's go ahead and get back into a top view. I'm not doing any kind of an inscription and all. Let me double click on this. And then we'll create the 3D carve toolpath for that backside. Let me flip it back over. All right, so here I'm going to use the selected vector as the vector for the toolpath. It's a very shallow cut. I could probably get away with just a finish cut, but depending on your CNC machine and its rigidity and strength and things like that, sometimes you You need that rough cut to kind of hog away the waste material. Sometimes you can just get away with the finish cut if it's shallow enough, you know, that kind of thing. This is probably shallow enough that I could get away with just a finish cut, but I'm going to create the rough cut for training purposes. So we're going to use the selected vector as a boundary. I'm going to use a 1/4 inch end mill. And this is just the rough cut. I'm not going to have any boundary offset. Never a boundary offset on the rough. Never say never. It's not always never, but in this case, don't want the bit going past the line on the rough cut. Always a Z-level raster. I'm not using my end mill to cut a 3D model. Technically I am, but all I'm using my rough cut for is to hog away waste material. So it's a Z level. We're going to calculate that. Aldrich Custom Crafts, welcome from PA. How you doing, buddy? And Lynn, welcome from Western Australia, man. Welcome, man. All right, let's go ahead and preview the visible toolpath. Now, this is a critical little tidbit of information here. When we finish the finish cut in here and all this stuff, the profile cut, cutting this part out, is going to happen on the other side. It's not going to happen on this side, and we're not going to cut halfway through because the other side with the bow and the ribbon and the curve of the heart and everything, all those, that lowest point is below the center line of the material, right? It's 1.6 inches, if you will, right? Instead of 1 inch. So it's almost 5/8 of an inch past that line. If I were to try to carve that part first, flip the piece over, and then do this side last, and then a profile cut to cut out, by the time I got partially through this, a few passes on that outside cut, it would just fall out. There's no wood there on that side. So this, on this particular project, on the lid, the inside, the bottom side of the lid gets cut first. Then the part gets flipped over. And then all of that other stuff gets cut last with the profile cut and everything. All right. So very important bit of information there. So on the rough cut, we're now going to do a finish cut. I only need 1 bit for this, and it could be my a large bit or whatever, but I'm just going to use my 1/8 inch tapered ball nose. We're going to remove the 16th. On this, we're going to use the selected vector as the boundary. I'm not going to do any boundary offset with this. We're going to do a raster cut, cutting with the grain, and the grain will most likely for me be running on the heart. On the heart. The grain will be running along the x-axis, so a 0 angle. This will be our 3D finish. I'll rename that in just a minute. Thank you, Sylvia. Yes, the lid is beautiful. How are you doing, girl? Hopefully you're doing very, very well. All right, so now we can preview the finish cut. It's going to, I don't have my animation turned on. Maybe next week I will, now that I have, you know, more processing power and everything when I'm fully transitioned over and everything. Seems like the stream is doing very, very well. Thanks to you all. Good job. the health of the stream, should I say. The stream is healthy, it says. Nice. Good, good. So hopefully there's no lagging, there's no buffering, there's no nothing. I could start gaming now. No, I can't. All right. Okay, now let's go here and look at what we've got. Let's come here. My rough cut into my lip. Let me look at my vectors. Let me think out loud for a second. That's recessed down. That's my lip. My finish cut goes all the way to there. My rough cut goes a little bit past to be the rough cut. And it milled away my lip. So you see these little stragglers right here? These little fibers, if you will, that are like, they look like little figments of ghost and trash and all. Right there. That's what's left of my lip. So that tells me I need to bring my vector in a little bit from this edge for the inside of the heart. So now this edge where the lip actually is going to be there, that stays because it's got to fit in my box, right? But the width, that 1/8 inch lip, needs to be thicker. So we're going to take our original inside vector. We're going to offset it inward. And this time, instead of 1/8 of an inch, I'm going to go 1/4. Actually, I'm going to go, because it's going to mill off 1/8 of that, I'm going to go 3/8. And I'm going to click offset. I'm going to take and open up the 3D Finish toolpath, and I'm going to select this vector here. And I need to basically recreate this model real quick, this component. So I'm going to go into the component tree and delete this one. And I'm going to recreate a new one. I am going to rename inside okay. Now I'm going to go back and open up my 3D Finish toolpath. Going to select a new vector and hit calculate. And I'm going to do the same thing with my rough cut toolpath. Let that finish calculating. There we go. I'm going to open up the 3D rough cut. select this vector. And, you know, that offset, that difference, it plays a role. It's, you know, the taper of the ball nose bit, because of that tapered angle, is reset. It's offset, not reset, offset inward, which plays a role in that. That's why there's a little bit of a difference between the rough cut and the finish cut. All right, let's reset the preview. Nothing else changes here. So we should be able to, we should be good now. Preview the visible toolpath. And I didn't look at my material setup to see if I need to change anything with that. I'll do that in a minute, because I remember I deleted that inside pocket, and I created a new one just now. And whenever if you do something like that, you need to make sure you go back to your material setup, and that model position in material, you make sure that that's what I'm trying to say. You make sure that it's in the right position. All right. So that's simulating. Let me look over my shoulder here. Doing good. All right. Hopefully you're doing awesome with all your amazing cooking videos. Yeah. They're pretty good. I'm experimenting with making little shorts for, like, you know, like when I made the homemade butter video the other night, made some homemade butter and everything. They're going well. And for those of you, yep, so I got to change the position on my I got to change my model position, because that is not the finish cut. Give me just a second. We'll finish that up. But really quickly, very, very quickly, I think it was last night. Last night, we made some homemade bread, if you will. And it was the first time making bread in the kitchen. So we had 2 beautiful loaves come out of the oven. And I had made the night before, I had made some homemade butter. Whipped up some homemade butter from Heavy Cream and all. And that's what we're using with the bread and everything. But wanted to, we were real happy with the way the bread turned out. It's so good. Oh my goodness gracious. It's absolutely delicious. All right, let me figure out how to get out of that. Okay, and made out of that. All right, now got to figure out what went wrong here. So the 3D rough cut, did I preview the 3D finish? Because that's not the 3D finish. Let me just rerun the 3D finish. On the preview. And what's going to happen is I I recalculated the rough cut. Did I recalculate the finish cut? So I'm going to recalculate all my tool paths. And let me just see if this, I think I didn't recalculate the finish cut because there's the top edge of the finish there. So I didn't recalculate the rough cut. I recalculated the finish, but I didn't recalculate the rough cut. All right. That's what the problem was. Let's go into the rough cut. Could have swore I recalculated the rough cut too, but let me just go check because this rough cut is cutting back. It's cutting into that original like it was. Yeah, see, it's still set for that old vector. This is the new vector. So I recalculated the finish and not the rough. That's, you know, there's anytime something goes wrong, there's always a reason for it. You just got to kind of step back and look and go to node editing and all that happy jazz, you know, whatever the situation calls for and stuff, and just get it worked out, you know. And let me make sure that rough cut wonderful. It did. Let me look at the 3D view. Okay, so that's an odd one. My pocket cut is on this vector instead of these two vectors. That's a weird one. Let's calculate that back. Crazy stuff. All right, reset that preview and preview the visible toolpaths. Yeah. Okay. Now we'll preview the rough cut. I wonder if that's what happened the first time around. If that first outer lip recess, if it got somehow recalculated with the wrong vector. I'll take a look at that later. But interesting. What I need is the rough to go well. There we go. That's going to be my lip right there. And let's go with the finish cut. It's coming right now. It's processing. Everything looks good so far. Looks deeper than I might have to look at the depth on that. We'll know right away when I go to create both sides. When we look at the toolpath as a whole, like as the whole piece, we'll know right away if that inside is too deep. It looks like it's stepping down quite a bit. Two to 1.1 1/8. So yeah, it's stepping down. Oh heck, it's stepping down a pretty good amount here. You see that step down right there. This edge is supposed to be up here at this edge, but it's stepped down. Now, the reason why it stepped down is, remember what I said when I said that I recreated that model, and it's very important to make sure that, you know, the model is positioned properly in the material. Now, in this situation, we're on side 2, right? So the model of the heart itself and everything is here on side 1. And so we are actually milling away this material, right? This is the material we're working on right here to get, to that curve and everything. So this slide bar needs to be down here at the bottom. And then when I flip it over, if Vectric is not tricking me right now, if I flip it over to, let me click OK right there. Let me hit no on that for right now. If I flip this over to side 1, when it flips in the material setup, that should flip as well. So if we go back to the material setup, if I'm not wrong, fingers crossed. Okay, so Vectric tricked me. So Vectric is not flipping this little block with our material. It's staying, the model position in the material is staying, it's not flipping with our sides. So it does, they had it right. It does belong back there. Okay, that is technically the bottom. So Vectric had me. I thought that in the version that when you flip it, it would flip over, but that's not the case. It's only when you're using material surface or machine bed. When you change those two, then it switches that around. Yeah. All right. Okay. So let's fix that again. I'm going to say no. I'll recalculate all the tool paths in one last swoop. Let's go back over to the other side. My component, the heart component here, is too deep. When we get over to the other side, flip it good. There we go. The inside lid of the heart is going a 1/2 inch deep. I don't want it to be a 1/2 inch deep. It's just a shallow recess, just a nice little recess. And so I'm going to bring that down, or up, should you say. I'm going to go just a 1/4 of an inch. Let that regenerate, and I'm going to simply recalculate the tool paths, and we should be good to go. At this point, I do want to make one more tool path before I recalculate them all, the final cutout. That way we can see it like, in its reality. Let's do a profile cut. Now, this tool path is going to be for preview purposes only. The actual profile cutout is going to be on the other side. So preview purposes only, I'm cutting this. I'm just kind of jumping the gun here. I'm going 3/4 with a 1/4 inch end mill on the outside of the line. I'm not going to do tabs or none of that stuff right now. Again, this is a tool path that's not going to get used. It's going to get deleted. But what I'm wanting to see here is when I do the cutout, I got to fix the inside of the heart here. But when I cut this out, I want you to be able to see the visual of that 3/16 inch lip. And I need to go on my profile cut. I need to go the full 2 inches. Hold on a minute. 2 inches. All right, let's double click on this waist. And then the reason why I'm doing this is just to get rid of that, just so you can see this lip. This lip is 3/16 of an inch, and it's what's going to fit inside the base. It's going to fit right there inside the base. Now, my thing to myself, when it comes to my fitted lids on my very small boxes, I make little small fitted lid boxes and everything. 3/16, believe it or not, is actually enough to hold on the lid and all that stuff. Now, I could, if I wanted to make sure that this thing doesn't pop loose or pop out or whatever the case may be, I could go 1/4, right? Or I'm sorry, I could add magnets, is what was supposed to be the end of that sentence. But if I want to ensure, let's say if I felt like, 3/16 on a project this big, because, it's a pretty decent sized heart, that it might pop out. I don't think it will. I'm going to stick with what I know for my smaller box. So I'm going to stick with 3/16, but it's one of those things that I can, from a scrap piece of wood, just so you know where I'm going here, I could create a tool path that I cut first, which is like a shallow pocket of my base. Not making the base, but just out of a scrap piece of wood, I could cut that inside pocket and everything. And then I could have that when I'm cutting this side first, because this side gets cut first before the part gets flipped over. I could create a relief cut so that I could actually stick that scrap piece down on it and test my fit, and all that stuff. I mean, there's a lot of things that I could do. I don't know what approach I plan on taking with that, but there's a lot of ways that I can ensure that I don't, I got a really good fit, and it's not too late to go back and fix something. All right, first thing I do want to go back and fix is we just changed the size of this heart, so I need to recalculate all the tool paths, and then when we recalculate all the tool paths, we'll look at the whole heart and its completion, as in a sense. But in order to do that, I am going to now delete this. I just wanted to show you that lip right there. I'm going to delete this toolpath because it's going to actually get made on the other side. None of the alignment holes for flipping and all have been made yet, and everything. None of those toolpaths have been made. This is just the lid right now. So we're going to go through and recalculate all the toolpaths. And this should recalculate both sides. Let me look over my shoulder. Nice. Nice. Now with that inside heart shallowed up to 1/4 of an inch, that little heart is going to be just a light recess on that and all. And again, like I said, if we wanted to, we could do some V-carb inscribing on the inside. I wouldn't put better late than never. That would be tacky, right? Better late. That would be terrible. But anyhow. All right, let's take a look at let's flip everything over. And, you're wondering, like, man, Lenny, you got a 1 inch or a 2 inch block of wood. Why does it look so thin and all that? Because from the very tip top of this center here, the highest point to the bottom, right? That's, the 2 inches. There's height in this curve. There's height, a 1/4 inch height, 3/16, ½ inch. I believe that's a ½ inch tall right there. So there's height, and then there's the curve that it's all sitting on top of, and everything. So all that plays a role. But what we're going to do is all the tool paths have been recalculated. We're going to add one. We're going to add not one. We're going to add all the tool paths to this side because they're not here yet. And so on this side, let's go to the 2D view. We're going to select this vector. And that vector goes, out to those stubs. It goes all the way around and out this edge. I made a vector for that. We're going to do a 3D rough cut using the selected vector as the boundary, no boundary offset, Z-level raster. This will be my top of lid. Now, keep this in mind. If you went back and looked at that popular woodworking article, right, while this is calculating and stuff, if you went back and looked at that popular woodworking article and everything on the ribbon, you'll notice that when they cut the strips and everything, you'll notice in the box and all, after the box gets glued up and put together, that they actually recessed a little groove, and the actual ribbon is glued into there, right? Because they're using that cherry and maple mixture, so it all looks correct and all. And if you ever wanted to do something like that, to where the ribbon and all, you know, is like you made the ribbon, those little pieces, and you glued them up and everything and all. Even this part right here could, the strip, if you will, the little strip right here, you could cut that on your on your scroll saw, or on the CNC table, to where it has a curve that follows the heart. But for me, because all these little ribbons right here, all the little streamers, if you will, if you look at the scroll saw, they're cut that way on the scroll saw. They're cut that way purposely, right? And everything. Now, a little bit of thinking about it and everything. This wood is so thin, these little strips are so thin, I could go ahead and glue up in those thin strips and stuff and everything, and I could, you know, throw them in some hot water or steam them or whatever, and I could bend them myself, you know, and make the curve. You know, I could have my model box there. I could cut my grooves in, you know, that where it would go, and then I could heat up. Heck, I mean, you could use some water and a hot air gun to make steam. There's all kinds of ways to do it. You could have a pot of boiling water and hold the pieces so thin, these pieces so thin, that heating it up or steaming it enough to where you can get a little bend out of it is not a problem at all. So it's pretty fairly straightforward and easy. But that ribbon part, I could mill the grooves in the top of my heart, and I could literally steam bend and clamp and glue, you know, or not glue yet, but clamp and shape my ribbon to fit in there and all that stuff. And I could steam bend and create shapes for the streamers, you know, from flat pieces, you know, thin enough flat pieces. But the bandsaw technique, you know, it's why not? It's pretty slick, you know, it works that way too. And they actually cut the curves, you know, the bends and everything in it, except for the straight pieces are straight, but we have a curved heart. So if I wanted to do this technique on that curved heart, I'd have to steam bend, or I'd have to bend that part to fit. So keep that in mind. I mean, it would be super duper creative, I feel. And yeah. All right. So the rough cut is done. I'm going to go ahead and do the finish cut. The rough cut is calculated. We're going to finish cut. And that model calls for, there's nothing really tight radius and everything, but even though that is true, I am gonna add in, I'm gonna use both of my bits, my 1/8 inch and my 1/16. So the 1/16 will get really into all those little nooks and crannies on that ribbon and bow and all that stuff. So I'm gonna have my 1/8 inch tapered ball nose, which is right there. And then I'm going to add in my that's my 32nd. I just need my 16th inch tapered ball nose. Selected vector is the boundary. Raster cut. I want to cut with the grain. Calculate. So if you get what I'm saying, and, you know, reading that, you know, that Popular Woodworking article, again, the link is in the chat. You might have to scroll up the chat and everything, but I put the link to that Popular Woodworking article. But that inspired me to get back, you know, not everything has to be made on the CNC. Now I'm going to cut my ribbon parts on the CNC and all that stuff, but I have a scroll saw, I have band saws, I have all that stuff. And just making a simple box with a scroll saw, bow, and all that kind of inspired me to kind of get back to it and everything, and you know, play around with some of that. It's a pretty bow, you know, and it's a great, it's a great idea. Not for every box, right? You know, but for those special anniversaries or something like that, it'd be a cool idea. Some really, oh gosh, some really, really nice bloodwood, real red, like a red bow. Some nice bloodwood and let's go. I don't know. Maple might be a little bit, maybe some ash or something, or something that's not so light, but you know, but yeah, I don't want it to look like a candy cane, right? But yeah. All right, let's preview the toolpaths that we have so far. Preview the visible toolpaths to see where we're at. Now, in this case, because I still have all this block of wood and everything, I could let my finish cut go past the edges of my model. So, because remember, I softened up those edges to round them over a little bit, you know, on that. So if I let the finish toolpath go past the vector line a little, offset boundary a little bit, then it'll do real well. Let's see here. Let's take a look and see where we're at. Okay. Now my finish bit. Now this plate. Now this is important here. This is very important to keep in mind. I'm going to hit. Wait for it. Let it finish. But my rough cut goes out a certain distance, and then my finish cut comes in because of the taper of the bits and all, comes in just inside of that. And what I want to make sure of is that little bit past that the shank of my bit isn't going to be hitting or rubbing when I'm traveling back and forth, that my bit's not hitting those sidewalls, that there's still a little bit of a clearance and all. If I'm concerned about that, I can do a little bit of a relief, because this is side 2 technically. This gets cut second. The bottom side gets cut first. So when I flip it over, this gets cut second. So I'm not going to be doing any more flipping. So I can do a relief cut. I could create a vector for these two parts right here and bring them down 1/4 of an inch. You know, I could do a pocket cut to mill that whole surface down just 1/4 to, you know, give myself a little bit of relief that my shank's not running in. And anytime you have a deep carve, because imagine, if you will, let me turn this in a way where it makes sense. Okay, the tip of my ball nose bit is going to be riding down to here. This lip that you see in there, this lip right here is where the rough cut went to. Okay, the rough cut went out to this point. Here, when my ball nose bit comes, the offset angle of that bit going into the shank, if the offset is more than this distance, if you will, when my bit is riding at this edge, this shank is going to be running into this sidewall. So I have 2 choices here. I have 2 choices. Number 1 choice is I could let my rough cut bit go past the boundary offset to widen this up a little bit, right? To open that up a little. Or, and that'll remove this material to open that up some. Or I could, depending on the length of my cutting flute to where I go into the shank and all, I could remove this material up here. That could be one of my first toolpaths to bring that down a little bit so that my shank isn't running into this, and it's all cutter, you know, that's coming close to it or whatever. One of those 2. Now, if we let the end mill go past the boundary. My heart is down here. The edge of the heart, when it curves over, it's down here basically. And that end mill, if it goes past the ledge, it could create a tendency for it to drop off the end mill, right? And so it's going to go deeper. Well, you have to remember now, I can't have it cut too deep on this edge because I'm removing 3/16 of an inch of material so far. Could be a quarter, depending on the fit. But I'm removing 3/16 of an inch from the bottom side. So if that rough cut, if I let it go past the line and it wants to drop down and rough cut something away, then I'm going to have to do it the other way. I'm going to have to mill this down to create a little bit of relief, right? So you really got to look at your preview. This is a 98% representation of what your carving is going to look like and everything. And it's a way to check for errors here before you get to the carve. All right. So that being said, let's look at option number 1, 3D rough cut. Open it up. We're going to let the bit go past the boundary. Now I only need to give it a little bit of relief. I don't have to go crazy, right? I don't have to go like the length of the bit or the width of the bit or whatever. I just need to go past the line a little, right? So I could let it go 3/16, 0.1875. And calculate that. So it opens it up that additional 3/16, and that additional 3/16, again, based on the taper of my ball nose, where the tip of my bit's going to be cutting its final pass, that taper angle to the shank, that 3/16, I don't think the taper is, a 3/16 inch wide taper. So when that rough cut occurs, when that rough cut happens and everything, let it go through and we'll see the new look out here. We'll see how much more material. We should be able to see it change here. If you keep a close eye on this, we'll be able to see how much that lip widens up, and it should widen up that 3/16. So because I want to give myself enough room. This last thing I'll say, I want to give myself enough room because I do want my finish cut to be able to go just a little bit further past the edge, so it creates that nice round, if you will. So let's see what happens when it drops off. Now, looking at that, right? This is my edge here, and the remaining material I have left is 3/8 of material on that bottom side. Okay, so from this top side, and I'm just moving my mouse into that groove and all, down to that cut, I'm down at 3/8. So that's how much material I have left on the other side. I'm at 3/8 material left on the other side. And remember that on that other side, I'm milling back here now. Remember, it's inside the lip, not out here. In here, I'm milling away 3/16, right? So that means that there's going to be a small 3/16 of an inch skin right at the edge. Because remember my cut goes past the edge on that other side to give me a clean edge. It's going to go past by that 1/16 of an inch. So there's going to be a 1/16 of an inch. Think of it like a little strip around this outer edge here that's only going to be 3/16 of an inch thick. Because I have 3/8 of an inch of material left. I'm removing 3/16 inch from that bottom side right out of the get-go. That's the first cut that I'm going to be doing. And so that's going to leave 3/16 inch remaining. And that's one of the pitfalls of you know, having the bit go past the rough cut, go past the edge and everything, you know, but for me, 3/16 is enough material that in this case, I'm okay with it. Now, my finish cut, the rough cut toolpath leaves a 40,000ths of an inch skin for the finish cut to remove. So when my finish bit, when I let my finish bit go over the edge, it's going to go another 40,000ths of an inch, 0.04. So we have to subtract that from that remaining 3/16 of an inch well too. So, right. So now we're getting down to about an 1/8 inch skin, which is fine. Hell, most of our tabs are always an 1/8 of an inch when we're leaving tabs and stuff in. So that's well, and this is going to be a nice hard wood. So it's not going to be anything that's fragile. So my boundary offset here, I'm going to let it go. My finest bit is a 32nd inch diameter, 64th inch radius. So I'm just going to let this go past the edge by the little bit more than the diameter of that 32nd. So it's going to go 0.04. 0.03125 is that 32nd, right? So we're going to go 0.04 on that. We're going to click calculate. Make sure they're both set to rest. Yep. All right, calculate, and we'll calculate that again. All right, so this will be the final toolpath for the top side heart minus the profile cutout. And then we can spend the next 20 minutes making our little bow pieces real quick. Let that calculate. And then we're going to call it a night. What do we got here? Why don't you glue this? Why wouldn't you glue the same time as you are bending and clamping? Because I am steam bending these parts, so they're going to be wet, very wet. And I'm going to shape and clamp them to get them to a general shape. And I'm going to give them a chance to take that shape and dry out. Then when the parts are dry, then I'll glue them together. I don't want that moisture weakening my glue. Right? I don't want it watered down. That's why. If I was just bending this without steaming and bending and clamming and all, which I'm not going to get that much of a bend without it breaking or destroying the fibers and all. I'm going to be steaming this, so this part's going to be wet. So I'm going to bend it to shape, clamp it, let it dry overnight, let it dry overnight to take its shape, take it out of its clamps, get everything, do any final touch. Then I'm going to do my glue up. Carney wood, canary wood. Yeah, canary wood and bloodwood. Canary wood would be really nice looking, right? Yeah. All right, let's go ahead and let's preview this visible toolpath. Yeah, canary wood and bloodwood would look really good together. I'd have to order that online. I don't have access to. I got access to bloodwood here in in Ocala. I got a hardwood dealer that carries a pretty good amount of hardwoods and some exotics, but I'd have to order the canary wood online. or drive somewhere that sells it. I could drive to Orlando to Rockler. But no offense to Rockler. I love Rockler. They used to sponsor my channels, right? But whoo, I think that wood's made of gold over there. It's expensive. Wood is not cheap at the precision stores, the woodworking stores. All right. So we're sitting back. Okay. Letting my finish bit wrap up. Okay. All right. So now I want to just take one last look at one thing. My profile cutout. And this profile cutout, the profile needs to go around these parts, right? So make sure you're selecting a profile that's going around those parts and all. Now on this is such a small little bit remaining and everything. And the my radius right here, I'm going to have to do a little bit of hand work and stuff to kind of clean up right in here. I could, if I didn't want to do a little bit of hand work, because my 1/4 inch radius, my 1/8 inch radius is not going to get really, really good right there in the corner. I'm going to have to do some cleanup. But if I didn't want to deal with that and I wanted to, you know, get a little bit tighter, maybe use an 1/8 inch end mill. I have an 1/8 inch end mill that will cut 1 inch deep, right? But this is a 2-inch piece of material, right? So if I was going to use the 1/8 inch bit to cut on this edge, now I've got this relief here, right? This is more than 1/4. My bit could go down and, you know, from where that rough cut to cut, my bit could get down in there. But what I would do to really ensure that I'm okay is I would remove definitely, you know, at least 1/4 or 3/8 of this material right here. You know, my board would be, you know, 2-sided tape down or hot glue or whatever you want to use. No clamps on here. If I was going to use clamps, I'd make my board a little bit bigger or what have you. But I've only got this certain amount of teak, so I got to stay with this. But it's going to be 2-sided tape. So no clamps. So I could surface this whole area right here down. And then I could use my 1/8 inch bit to carve in there, which will make that radius smaller, right? But I won't know that, or, you know, I won't know if that's something I want to do and all until I create my tool path. It's kind of, that's what this preview in Vectric is for, is to really be able to look before you go carve a piece of wood. Look and see what it is you want to do. Now I'm taking shallow passes here on this. I'm not being, excuse me, excuse me. I'm not being too aggressive. Technically, I could, I'm only taking a little bit of material on this inside edge here, just a little bit. So I could definitely be a little bit, you know, take my passes. I don't need to take so many passes, right? I could reduce them down dramatically because I'm not taking a whole lot of material from the inside of this for this profile cut. So let's take a look at that so you can see what I'm referring to on this profile cut. It is not even cutting into that outside wall. Let's take a look in here. And so all that, oh, hold on, let me turn it a little bit better. Come on now. Excuse me. My 1/4 inch bit is just cutting in here, right? And there's still, where this lip is, right? There's still that much room, that much relief, right? So I don't have to do, I could do this in, it's really technically only cutting from here down that 3/8 of an inch. I could technically do this in 2 passes. There's absolute no reason whatsoever for me to have to do my normal 16 passes and everything. So I'm going to reduce this down. I'm actually going to do this a little bit different. I'm going to set a start depth. I'm going to start at 1.5 inches, go down to, and then have it remove that last ½ inch. I'm going to do that in 2 passes. All right, so we're going to calculate that one more time. And so it'll start down here and it'll do the first pass, 1/4 inch, and then the second pass. And there's bear with me just a second. For the sake of those that like to keep their bits at 1/8 inch per pass, I'll do it in 3 passes. So that way I'm only taking about, 5/30 seconds per pass. All right, so set that. Excuse me. All right. Now let's get moving along here real quick so we can spend we spent a little bit too much time talking about that last little bit there. Let's go in and that is calculated, right? We're going to close that, double click on this just to see where we're at here, right? So you can see that. Now, when this cuts, just so you understand what's happening here, on the bottom side, there is 3/16 of an inch of material getting removed from this bottom side in here. And so it's going to leave that lip. It's going to seem like that lip on the edge is really shallow. It's 3/16 of an inch thick. But so let's look at this now. We're going to calculate all sides, or not calculate, we're going to preview all sides. Go into the preview. Well, we already got side 1 preview, so we're just going to flip over and preview side 2. If I clicked on preview all sides, it would run through all the toolpaths again. Preview all the toolpaths on this side. And then I'll show you how I'm going to make the ribbon pieces real quick. And again, check out that article. It's something fun to do. All right, it's I don't have my preview animating. I just have it working in the background, so it only shows the results. So all you're seeing right now is the blue bar, travel across the screen. You're not actually seeing anything happen on the screen. And I just do that for time purposes and everything. You know what's funny is on the drink that I'm drinking here, it's in a water bottle, but there's a flavor mix in here to make it green apple. And So it's green, but because of the green color and the green screen, it makes it look like it's clear. All right. Now, I can already see one thing that needs to be fixed. Let's double click on the waste here. And give it just a second. The vector that I used on the that was just saying where I was clicking, it was trying to delete the whole board. The vector that I used to create that relief, right, was just the heart. So it left these little side nubs here. And that's, I think I'm okay with that. It wasn't intentional. It was just, you know, I didn't use the right tool path. But when the lid goes together, those two little sides will kind of overlap the base because it's the same size, right? It'll overlap the base, so it looks like the ribbon is going down into the base. So that, for me, I'm just going to pretend like I planned that the whole time, but even though I didn't. Now, everything looks good with the recess and all. But yeah, so that 3/16 recess right there, and all that's going to do on that ribbon, that's just going to help reinforce it a little bit, you know, as far as the hold and all that stuff. But that 3/16, I used the regular plain heart vector as the toolpath instead of the one with the side notches, and so it milled in between there, leaving those, and that's great. I'm totally fine with that. Totally fine with that. That's freaking perfect. I like it. All right. So if we were to, let's hit save. Yeah, I'm totally fine with that. So if we were to let that save for a second, and then we'll take a look. And all right, so if we kind of just show this lid, it's just going to be a small box lid. It's going to have that little recessed lip in there that fits into the base, and it's going to be a really nice, it'll look really good. I'm still not convinced on the inside here. The inside doesn't look like it's got a curve to it, but it might. Remember, I shallowed it up to 1/4, so it's probably that. But I'm okay with that. The little lip and everything, I'd like to see, you know, something a little different there, but that's okay. I can, if it really bothers me, I know exactly how to sand, or I know how to use a chisel. And that would be easy to just shave away. All right, so that's that. So that's going to be our lid, right? So now we have a lid and we have a base. Done. Now, in a new sheet, really quickly, because it's getting late. It's 10 o'clock. We've been at this for 2 hours. Is everybody still with me? Or did I lose everybody? You are still with me. That's good. Stick around. Okay, good. All right. We're going to add a new sheet. This particular piece, now, this is going to be the glue up of the ribbon. Now, remember, it's not a glue up. I'm not using multicolors, but this would be the glue up if you were using multicolors. I'm just using one color. Now, how big my sheet needs to be, my piece of wood, not very big at all. You know, I'm only cutting a couple of little parts out of it and everything, right? So I do not need this to be a 12 by 12 by any means. So whatever piece I have left over of this teak, I won't know until I kind of get everything, you know, figured out. But the definitely doesn't need to be a 12 by 12. I could probably go with a we'll just go 8 by 6, 8 by 6. I won't be too small, and it only needs to be 3/4. We'll figure out the thickness in just a second. 8 by 6. I'm going to set it for 3/4 right now, but I'll show you how we're going to determine how big it needs to be, how wide it needs to be. 0.75. Because remember, these bows are going to be cutting on their sideways, on their side, like, laying on their side. So the thickness of the material is going to represent how wide the bow is, right? So let's click OK on that. We're going to switch back over to, are we on side? Yeah, we're on side. We're going to switch back over to the top side, if you will. All right, so let's go back to the lid really quickly, so I can create some vectors to show you, like, imagine if we were looking at a top view kind of deal. Okay, I'm going to use a rectangle kind of to represent, the vectors and all that stuff, but I only want visible right now. Let's turn everything off except for these two items. Okay, now top down, so I'm just using rectangles to represent. I do need one more vector. Let me find out where that vector is. It's right here. I need this copied over to that. Okay. Now, we'll just use a rectangle to kind of represent this. We're going to have a piece of bow that's going to come out, and it's going to be just about as wide as that. It's just going to sit just on the inside of where this starts to curve, right? So we're going to come just on the inside there, and it's going to come out, and then it's going to loop up and around, right? So it's going to come out, and then right about here is where it's going to start looping around. And my loop, now imagine this being the inside of the loop, or the outside, I guess, but it's going to start looping around and everything here. And then, so if I take that, I'm going to hold down the shift key and select this, and I'm going to center those two parts in there. And that is definitely, I'm going to have to do it by eye because my bow is a little bit bigger on this side than it is that side. So I think where I was a good visual. So this is going to represent kind of that base. It's going to come around and it's going to start curving. And then, so we'll mirror this and flip this to the other side. Right, that's going to be the other side bow. And then there is going to be another bow that's represented by this rectangle. Or that's going to be the base where it comes together, but there's going to be another bow the same size, but it's going to come down. It's going to come down. It's going to flatten off right at the bottom. That's going to be just about this wide. So it sits right in between those two parts. So everything comes together. Now, if we were to use the Popular Woodworking article to visualize that, we're going to have a part that steps up, just like this notch right here. We're going to have a part that steps up,
And that part is going to be that steps up and hooks over this. So those two ribbons that sit down on there, it's going to be one part, one piece that we're cutting. And it's going to sit over here. And then when that piece sits over that, then this part is going to fit. This part right here is going to sit down on that kind of elevated piece, if you will. And the outer edges here, we kind of want them to make contact in here between, you know, how far apart they are and stuff, because, and we will draw that with in Vectric and everything, because basically when everything comes together and all, we want this center bow. It's going to be wider than the bow than all the two outside ones, because we want it to touch. We want it to, when it comes down and glues in there in the middle, we want it kind of to touch the two uppers so that it looks like they're all three like choop, 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 right? So in here, now that we have these three vectors right here, these three vectors are going to, for me, just represent kind of size and everything. So now I can move them to a sheet. This sheet will be sheet 2. Sheet 2. And I want to copy them to a new layer. And I'm going to call this layer bow, whatever. All right, let's go ahead and click OK. We'll make sure that copy that we just made, we'll move that to sheet 2 as well. All right, let's go ahead and turn off this and just have bow active. And then let's go over to our sheets and make our sheet 2 active. And if all is right with the world, we should have those three vectors right there. That's good. Now, these vectors are just for reference purposes. What this will help me do is when I'm drawing the profile of the curve and all, it'll help me tell me where my little hump is, right? And the one thing that I really needed to do was on that lid, I needed to kind of see what my height was, right? So I need to really quickly pop back over there. That was the one thing that I was supposed to check and forgot to check. But on that lid, let's actually turn on the everything. Let's go into the 3D view and close this. Flip back over to, please tell me that was the top I just clicked on. It was real good. All right, I'm going to turn this a little bit just so you can see what I'm checking and everything. Now, down at the bottom of the screen, I'll have numbers, right? So here, this is a flat surface, even though it's curved, right? It's arched. There's a slight arch to it and everything and all. But on that, I actually, you know, created this kind of to where it's going to be more flat than it is arced and everything. What really shows the arc is this ribbon here, but there's still a slight little curve to it. So I'll make sure I include a slight indentation in there. But if I look at the numbers at the bottom of the screen when I'm hovering over here, this is a flat plane and this is a flat plane. So this number, my Z height here, make sure I'm in the middle because there's roundovers on the edges. So make sure I'm kind of in the middle here. 1.79. Let me get up closer here. There we go. I'm going to stay in the middle all the way across, but 1.7861. I'm going to write that down because I won't remember it by the time I get over to the other sheet. 1.7861. I'm going to move up to here. That's the center. I'll put C there. 1.9311. So the difference between those two numbers is the height of this. And this is so small, the curve's not really affecting it at all. There's just a slight variation. I'll make sure I include that in there and everything. I'll have like left, right, and middle. So 9.4, and it's going to be thousandths of an inch. That's not even worth really going to the trouble, but let's do it anyway. Let's try to stay consistent with my line if I don't quit moving my mouse the wrong way. Yeah. All right, now from the edge here, if I come out to here, right about here is where that's going to start curving up. 1.74. Okay. And yeah, 1.74. That from that number 1.7861 to 1.74, that's only 20 thousandths of an inch. There's a very slight amount of curve, and I can include that in the CNC when I'm drawing the vectors here in just a minute. But technically, I don't really need to go too crazy. I could sand that curve. It's only just a few thousandths of an inch. All right, let's switch back over to sheet 2. What was important for me is the height difference, because that tells me my little notch depth, my little notch. All right, so back on sheet 2 here, we're going to come in and that notch there. So basically, my loops, if you will, let me freehand draw this roughly just right now. Imagine that this part is going to come out, and it's going to, and again, I'll use shapes to create this shape. I'm not going to freehand draw it well. I'm not a good freehand drawer. There's going to be a notch that comes up and down, and then this shape is going to come across, and it's going to come up. Now, I got to draw this to where I can cut it and it looks good and everything. So I am going to use normal shapes instead of freehand drawing. All right. So first things first, I'm going to start with the notch in the middle. Now what I'm doing here is I'm drawing, now I'm looking at the part is laying, the bows are laying on their side, and I'm looking down at them. So they're going to come out here because that's how the router bit's going to come down and cut these shapes out, right? So the notch, my first number on my height here, my first number to the center of that notch was 1.9311, and I'm going to subtract 1.7861 from that, and that's how high my little notch needs to be on that part. And again, this bottom, we go into node editing mode. This bottom span gets cut away. Oops. Right click and delete the span, because from there, you know, we're now drawing, you know, it's going to be, this is going to be part of the bottom base, if you will. So once again, just for visual purposes, because I'm not really good at explaining it, if we look at these cuts here, that notch is going to be in the middle of this bottom base right here that you see on there, that flat piece. There's going to be a notch in the middle, and then the parts are going to come up and around and that kind of thing, right? Okay, so that's that's what we're getting at. Now, here, for me, I'm gonna start off with a rectangle, and the rectangle is going to represent my boundary, if you will. Now, to create this, I'm going to go into node editing mode. So in node editing mode, I'm going to delete this node over here, and I'm going to delete that point. And now that gives me this triangle. Okay. Now I have this point here, and I'm going to end up creating a radius, if you will. And I'm also going to create that same radius here, so it kind of creates that curve. Now I could come over here. I could have shortened this up, and I could just right click and turn this into an arc to kind of create this general shape right here. But I need, we're not going to do a straight line like this. It's still going to be a little bit of more of a curve here, right? So how I'm going to do this instead is I'm going to kind of figure out what kind of radius I'm looking to get and everything. I'll use my fillet tool, and let's say that I was going to go with a 3/4 inch radius. I would kind of, this is going to start kind of lifting, here. And I'm not going to be able to get a 3/4 inch radius out of here because of this flat line, but I want to, because I kind of want to, complete it all the way around, and then I'll end up, manipulating that. But I don't have to put the node back or all that. I'm just simply going to come in here, and I'm going to go into node editing, and I'm going to turn this into a Bezier curve. Okay, so that way I can kind of pull this, right? But I'm going to take this right here, and I'm going to smooth it out. Okay, so that's going to create that. Now, this arc here I got this rough pot. I'm going to delete that because I'm going to be able to use, I just want this one point pretty much here. But this, I'm going to pull back out to here, to where the, that shape starts coming in. We'll pull this down here, start creating that curve. Now, I kind of want to stay right in line with this, but I'm fine that I'm going to pass a little bit because remember, my base is a little bit longer. I went shorter, if you remember the vectors. Now here, okay, here is where I'm going to start kind of, this side is going to be taller, right? But I want it to be in a way that that looks Bowie, that looks Bowie, David Bowie. There we go. I want it to be kind of a way that looks Bowie, where I don't have too much of a flat spot here or anything like that. And I want it to, have kind of a nice, transition. Now this is going to transition into, there's going to be a thickness to this notch right here, right? So it's going to kind of stop right here and cut across and all that stuff. We'll do that in just a second. But I want this, and remember, now there's going to be a thickness to this. There's going to be an inside offset. You'll see that in just a second. But I want that, imagine that on the box and everything. I want kind of a nice looking, shape. Let's go ahead and mirror that shape to the other side, just to kind of give you a little bit more of a visual. Not that far to the other side. The whole thing right here, let's get all this centered on the board. Now I can mirror that to the other side. Okay. So this, my bow on my other side is just like I said, that bow base and all is organic, so it's not, you know, it's not like perfectly centered and all that stuff. But that suits me just fine because I can move it out to there like that. Okay. So now, and again, this is nothing. This gets deleted in a few minutes. This is just my reference. Okay. Now I need, first of all, let me get this part made, and then I'll make the next part. I need a straight line. Is that going to be too thick? Quarter of an inch will be, I think a quarter of an inch will be too thick. So let's make that line. Now I want this line, just so you guys know, you probably, some of you all know this, but I want this line to stay right here connected on this line, but I want to shorten it. If I go into the size tool and everything with this anchor point set to the middle, if I resize this right now, 0.1875, it's going to resize from both ends, and it's going to take that line off of this base that I want. I want to, from the bottom of the line, doesn't matter which one of these two you choose, but from the bottom of the line, I want that to stay where it is, and I want to reduce the height from the top down. So I want to select that bottom there, and then I want to change this to 0.1875, and it's just going to pull that down from that line, keeping it touched right here and all. So when you're sizing something, or if you're doing something, if you're connected to a particular point, but you need to adjust the height of something, make sure that you're not in the center, because it's going to adjust the height from both edges and it's going to pull towards the middle. Make sure you select, you know, if you need to shorten the bottom up or the top down, choose the appropriate. If I want to shorten the top down, then I'm gonna keep the bottom anchored, or I would keep the top anchored if I'm reducing the height from the bottom up, right? That's the anchor. So it's like locked down, right? So keep that in mind. All right, so at 3/16, that's a pretty decent thickness. I'm going to take a straight line, basically, and I'm going to connect from here to here. And with the scissors, I'm going to come in and trim here, here. That line can go away now. Trim here and here. And that is going to be my part. This is going to be my part that sits down over that notch, right? Now, remember, there's a slight bow in that, you know, from, you know, on that base. And we took numbers, I took measurements and everything. I could incorporate that little bit of a curvature here from this point to that point, you know, that little curve on both sides. I could incorporate that in. Basically, I could in node editing, give me just a moment. .78, that 40,000ths of an inch, if you will, right? So I will go, my inside point was 1.7861. Let me use guidelines here. So if this notch was sitting down here and resting, that's going to be the base that makes contact there. And so on this guideline here, I need to create another parallel guide that is 1.7861 minus 1.7436 equals, and it's going to be a negative number. It's going to be going because it's going to go down. Okay. And so I can go into node editing, and that was kind of out at this point that I measured here. So, you know, coming in, I could try to find that point. But if I pull this down to here, here in between here is just a very subtle curve. So I can come in, and it's not an arc, it's a Bezier. And I could just give it that curvature. Let me turn off the guidelines so you can see that. So I could have it start, you know, kind of tapering down on that curve and everything if I, you know, wanted to do that. Now, because it's only 40 thousandths of an inch and all that, I would prefer to sand it to fit. You know, I can come in and I can set the piece down on my part. I can see when it makes contact on the outer edge. I can see how much I'm raised up on, you know, the top edge, and it'll give me an idea of how much I need to sand, because I got to sand this part anyway to clean it up and all. I'd rather do that in the sanding than trying to get it perfect here, you know, and all that stuff. So I'm going to leave that alone. Just know one could do that, but I'm going to do it in the finish and all. Now, here we're going to do an offset inward based on how big we want our walls, how thick we want our ribbons. And I definitely want my ribbon to be at least 1/4 of an inch thick. Let me look at 1/4 here. I'm going to go 5/32. I want it to have, because I got to do some sanding. So I'll sand it. It'll finish it down to 1/4. So we'll go 1/4 of an inch is 4/16 is 1/4, right? 16th, 8, 16th, 1/4. And what I say, 5/32 because I'm an idiot. 5/16 is what I was trying to say in my head, which is 0.3125. Lord have mercy. Okay. Right? Am I getting stupid? 5/16 equals, yeah, 0.3125. All right, so we're going to offset inward, no sharp corners or anything like that. We're going to create that inward vector. That's going to be my inside cut for that bow to give me that kind of a finished look, and then I'll be able to do some sanding and stuff. And now I'm going to be using an 1/8 inch end mill for the cut. Now here I'll do some little chisel work to clean up and all, but in here my bit's going to create the radius anyway, but I might as well come in and put in my 16th inch 0.0625. We're going to come in here and just throw that in like that. That's going to be those two cuts, right? Okay. Now I want there's going to be one more piece. There's going to be one more piece to this. There's going to be a piece that basically I'll start off with a square. Okay. I don't want it to be too dramatically tall, right? How tall am I right now? 1.8. Let's go. Let's go where I'm just, let me close this for a second. From the tip top of my ribbon, stick with me, ladies and gentlemen. We're about to wrap it up here, but from the tippy top of my ribbon, if I create a guideline, I want, let's say the other bow is up just 1/4 of an inch above that. We'll go 0.25. Okay. And then we can bring this down to there. Okay. So it'll be there. And let's go into node editing. We can turn off the guidelines. We don't need that anymore. But now we need to kind of create that little curve, right? And it's all aesthetics and everything, right? So here, you know, I could bring this over kind of like this, and I could bring this over kind of like this and all that good stuff and all and what have you. But it's a Bezier curve, right? So let's turn that into a Bezier curve. And essentially, I'm going to create an offset of this one right here. I'm going to create an offset outward, and that's going to give me some reference lines to go to, right? Because the edges are going to go there, and it's going to give me that curve and everything. So I'm going to create an offset line of a oh gosh, just a few thousandths of an inch. I want it to be not visible to the, you know, because this part's going to fit in, and it's going to make contact with these. So just, I mean, like literally just a little bit. I could almost just make a copy of this. Let's go outward. Shoot, 0.005. Okay. Now, let's get rid of this. You'll see why in a minute. From here, now this gives me, what that does is that gives me the vector here and everything. And now I'm going to use an ellipse instead of a rectangle. I'm going to find right up the middle here. Remember now, there's a certain height that I'm going up. Let's turn the grid lines on. I'm only going up this high, right? So my ellipse kind of bulky there. Let's play it by ear. Might want this to go up just a little bit higher. Not much. Now, taking my scissors, zoom in really close so you don't clip the wrong line. I'm going to come here and here, okay, and we'll end up connecting those two together. Come down, get rid of this, and get rid of that line in there. Get rid of this and that line there. All the way around. Get rid of that little nub there as well, too. To here. Get rid of that little nub. And then this vector that we just created right here, we've got some, you know, fairly sharp points and all, but that, I don't mind that it's sharp points and everything because it's going to sit down and it's going to get glued to those parts, right? So the what I want is it to have a nice look to it. So from here, if I said, okay, I'm going to bring this down a little bit more, and let's say I hold down the shift key and bring this in some kind of thing, and let's say I wanted the bow narrower for whatever reason, narrow and tall, then I want, you know, I want to not do what I just did as far as sizing. I want to use my nodes I'll bring a guideline. Let's say we'll just come right down to here. And let's just line up with these nodes. They're not going to be they might be the same. Yeah, they're the same on both sides. So here, I've already got a point there. And I've got a point here. So I can, stick with me. Let's say that right here is where I want to start kind of coming up and around. I can delete these points here from point B to A, and I can make it that Bezier curve, and I could shape it however I want to come in and stuff. It depends on what we want. Now let's look at this with our kind of a 3/8 inch offset, or our 5/16 offset. Let's look at this and see what it looks like. Trying to wrap up here. It's getting late. Okay. Now, that kind of looks like a light bulb, right? I'd probably want this to be, gosh, I don't want it so big. I don't want it sticking up like, we're already at 1.5 inches tall. So here, let me take a look here. Tape measure. Off the top of the box. Yeah, that's, I don't want to go too much taller than that. So that centerpiece, this is 1.5 inches. This will be, coming up. It's going to technically be kind of coming up here. So if that's the case, then I definitely want to reduce that a little bit narrower. So let's come in here and definitely bring this. I'm going to bring this down. Actually going to bring this down to this node. And then I'm going to go through and select these points and hit D on the keyboard when you select multiple points to delete them. And then you can right click and delete. Let's select these points. D. Okay. Right click here and smooth this so it kind of gets that shape going on there. That one's already smooth. Now, as far as the shape and stuff, now we got to start kind of getting real here. I don't want to go any taller than that. Oops. So from here, we're going to smooth this point, right? Just kind of smooth that one right there. We're going to smooth. Oh, that one's not going to let us smooth. That one's not quite going to let us smooth out, so we'll have to kind of do it on our own. This is too dramatic inward, and it creates, kind of like a odd looking shape. So I'm going to pull this up. To where I'm a little bit. And I'm going to pull this in. I'm going to pull this in. Oops. Okay. Now I'm going to take a guideline and kind of snap right down the middle. Make sure that I'm somewhat symmetrical. Now I could, from that guideline and everything, I could measure over to here, measure over to there, make sure they're the same, blah, blah, blah. But again, you know, we're woodworking. Man, I might reduce the size of these down to give this one a little bit of a height, but I really don't want to. I want them to be all right. Let's create my 5/16 offset inward. In the real world, let me see here. In the real world, let me think. I'm going to offset this. I'm going to size it. Gosh, this is one of those dilemmas, and like unless you make it and see what, you know, and adjust it from there. But let's say that we offset that inward. If you're wondering what I'm doing, I am taking these and repositioning them over here, recreating this line that actually is that line. Oops. There. I am taking the scissors, trimming that away. That got to ungroup. Hold on, Control Z. Hold on a second. I have a group that I need to ungroup. All right, now I can oh, you son of a gun. Hold on a second. I moved those shapes without selecting the inner shape first. So select those two and that. Make sure you move it all together. All right, a little bit of node editing. Not on this one, on this one. Okay, you see here, when I created that offset, it made these terrible looking nodes and everything. I'm going to go back really quickly to the curve fit tool. I want Bezier curves, no sharp corners. I want to replace that, and I want to replace that to clean that back up. So that way, when I'm in node editing here, I have my Bezier curves pretty much back. But what I want to do is I want to pretty much kind of pull this into here. And I want to insert a point right there, and kind of pull that in there. Bring this back here. Bring this kind of, get rid of this point. Bring that to there. Bring this in. Delete this point here and pull this back up. Delete this point here and pull this back up. Actually, delete. Come on now. All right, delete that, and offset. Let me pull this one up just a little bit more. Offset inward my 5/16 and call it a day. Inward 5/16. Okay, that's going to be the 3 parts. So we're going to take these, group them together. Somewhere on my piece of wood, we're going to cut that. We're going to take this part, group it together. This is trash. We can get rid of that. This will be a starting point. I have plenty of wood that I can test cut this and see what's going to look really the best. The only thing I'm missing is some idiot trimmed away his notch. Right, so I lost my notch on the bottom. Fun me. Let's, for right now, I'll go back and I won't save this. I'll just use the undo button and go back and undo everything I just did, but I'm not going to do that with you guys. But let's kind of imagine you will, there's a notch there. Well, I'll have to go all the way back, right? But these 3 parts, they will get profile cut. So I'll just do one for right now. We can do this one as well too, but the bow, getting that perfect shape, getting it to really look good and look not too tall, not too tacky, but not too short and too ugly. It's just one of those things. And I'm anal when it comes to that. So it's not a thing to be trying to do at 11 o'clock at night. I'm going to do this as a test cut. I'll fix this first tonight, but I'll do a test cut and then I'll make adjustments. I'll make adjustments, and then when I think it looks good, I'll make the files available to everybody. All right, so here we go. We're going to do just really quickly a profile cut tool path. We're going to cut all the way through our material. Now, our material is 3/4 of an inch thick. And remember this width here, that width represents the thickness. So the width is actually 1 1/4. So when it lays on its side, 1 1/4 inches wide. So my material needs to be at least 1 1/4. It does need to be 1 1/4. So I need to take my board, rip it down to 1 1/4, mill it, what have you. But so that's how deep I'm going to cut through. I got to fix the material size. The material is still set up for 3/4. But I liked the size of the first bow, so I'm going to step back to that and I'm going to try to fix the middle, but I'm going to try to adjust everything so it's not so tall. But I like the shape of the first start of the bow, and we'll, but again, using the wrong router bit in the toolpath, of course, I need to use an 1/8 inch bit. 1/4 inch bit, so I have to adjust my radiuses and all. But those 3 parts, they're going to end up getting cut out. I'll probably want the bow to be a little bit thinner, so that 5/16 is going to be too much of an offset. I'll probably go where it's only 1/4 inch thick, but I do have to sand, so that's going to play a role. Long story short, we got our bow pieces that we're going to be cutting. They're not perfect right now, but they will be when you get the files, to you. So we're going to have these cut out of a piece of wood, and mine's going to be just a solid piece of wood, solid color, one color, and it's going to be the same color as the same wood as the heart, the teak, and all. But that is, that's how we're going. I like the first of it, the first shape of the hearts. If I were to come back and see if I can catch this up to itself. I like that first shape where I had my notch and everything, right? So we'll leave it right there. That's my original shape. And I'll fiddle it with it there, but I need to keep my notch. I need to remember not to delete my notch and everything. But I'm going to cut these pieces as is first, and then it'll let me know what I need to do with my centerpiece to make it look really good. I think what I need to make it look good is I think I need to shorten this gap up right here. It doesn't need to be that wide. This center part needs to teardrop in more. So this bottom part here needs to come in. This bottom part here needs to come in closer, right? Because I'm just notching over this, so this can be narrower in. It needs to come in more, and this top part needs to teardrop more, and it'll look better. It's probably a good width and a shape right here, but if it were to pretty much teardrop in, and this isn't the way to do it, but definitely not the way to do it, but you get the idea. If it was narrower and those parts, those bows came in more, and that's just as simple as going here and going on node editing, and let's say bringing that node in to there and this node into here, kind of. I'll play with it to get it right, but something needs to happen there to make it look good. And I won't know until I actually cut an actual piece. It's hard to visualize in a two-dimensional element. If I had SketchUp installed on this computer, I'd jump in SketchUp and do it, and we'll go from there. All right, let's see what we have for the comments and everything. So sign your work. We've got fired up. Very awesome class, Laney. I'll finish watching. Have a great night, Sylvia. You probably left a long time ago. You missed the bottom right snip. Probably did. Back then, maybe I caught up to it. Check, let me know. But cut it down the center. Delete one side and mirror the other side. For sure, Michael Bell. That's one way we can do to make sure it's symmetrical and all that stuff. But if we tied a bow, it wouldn't be symmetrical, right? But yes, we could absolutely do that. Now, that centerpiece, definitely. So it doesn't look wonky. That centerpiece would definitely be a good idea to cut that down the middle and mirror it so it looks uniform. But I need to get it figured out. You know, when we look at, if we were to look at this as a reference and idea, you see how theirs goes more angled up, right? They're angled up and then around. That way, this centerpiece, which is laying over here, it has that angle up and then it comes around, right? You know, so that angle, I think I'm too steep this way, which makes it fat on the base. I need to be more angled up on those inside lines there, and that's really going to help capture that middle piece and really make it look better so it doesn't look so fat at the bottom. It looks short and fat right now, you know what I mean? And I think that's really gonna change everything, because when the parts, and again, this is a great article, you should definitely read it. But you see how they're much more angled on that inside cut, you know, and then it's looped and it's angled on the outside too. So it only comes out a short ways and then it kind of lifts up, and that's what gives it its rise. And everything. When we're sitting here looking at this, it's just short from that centerpiece, you know, from my little notch, just a short little bit. It doesn't need to stretch all the way out. It's just a short little bit and up. But now I do have a big bow, so I need to cover some of it, right? I need to cover some of it, not all of it, but that lift that they have is what makes it, you know, I'll figure it out. And then I'll make the files available in the description. They'll be available to download and stuff. So give me a day or so, not a day or so, but a day to work on it. You know, Saturday or something. And I'll put an announcement out when the files are ready to download. All right. And all right. Thanks, Kurt. I appreciate that. Awesome effing class. I like it. All right. I'm going to hit save so I don't lose none of this, but I really, 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 really want this bow to look good. And if this is one of the reasons why I don't bake things together, you know, and I have my originals. Let's say, just my last little food for thought to get your thinking all. Let's say that I thought to myself, you know, my bow that's part of my model, my lid, I need to actually bring that in a little bit because it needs to be a little, you know, in a little so I get the height and stuff. Let's say I needed to do that. I could jump back and redo this vector, recreate that component and everything, and rebake the copy of it all. And I could, I could step back. I could do that. It wouldn't take long to fix that and everything. So that's why it's important for me that on my, let's go back to sheet 1 real quick. On my lid. That's why it's important for me. What side am I on? What view am I on? What view? Okay, there we go. It took a second for those components to pop up. They were blank for a minute there. All right, so that's why it's important for me that these originals and the bow base, that's the part, right? That's that part right there. All I'd have to do is recreate the vector to, reshape it a little bit, recreate that model component, and then it's already set. I just recreate a new part, and it would be very easy for me to do because my originals are right here. Once I correct that one piece, I could make a copy of the model again, and then I could work from the smoothing and all that stuff there. So that's why it's important for me to be able to do that, to keep my originals intact. So if I didn't have the ability to bake multiple components, if I had desktop or pro, all my components would be individual and they would stay individual. So I could go back and change them at any point in time. I wouldn't bake them because even on an individual model, if I go into the properties and I bake it, it's baked, right? I can't go back and adjust it. I'd have to recreate it in this and all that stuff. So you get what I mean? So hopefully you do. And that's why it's important for me to be able to go back and all. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to end here. This box is made. It is, the tool paths are created except for the alignment pins and the alignment holes. They will be in the finished files and the vectors and everything. It's basically, we're going to do a 1/4-inch hole in this corner, a 1/4-inch hole in that corner, and we're going to copy that or copy it to the other side, those holes, and they're going to be our alignment pins for flipping. I've got plenty of videos on two-sided projects, but there's also other short videos that are only like 10 or 15 minutes long that even in the help menu, help video tutorial browser, there's a very short video on two-sided machining talking about the alignment pins. It's direct to the point, and we don't need to get into it. There's a direct, detailed, short video that's easy to absorb right in the video tutorial browsers for alignment pins, setting up alignment pins. But we have our base, we have our box, both sides. We got lucky on the bottom side, that little lip. So now we have little catches on the side for the ribbon, which was great. And now it just comes down to those top parts, figuring out those top parts and, good to go. But right now I could go out to the shop and I could, with these tool paths, I could go out and cut the box. I just don't have the top part. So I'll get all that finished here in just a little bit. I'll spend some time on the design and then I'll make the files available and I'll put it in an announcement for you. I really appreciate everybody that stuck with me to 11:08 at night. I hope I didn't ruin your Friday night too bad. I hope it was somewhat educational, probably boring as all be it, but somewhat educational. And for those of you that agree with Kurt that this was an awesome effing class, give me a thumbs up. It really helps the algorithm. Y'all have a wonderful night. We will see you next Thursday at 8 o'clock. Thursday, back at our regular time. Peace out, everybody. I'll send on Facebook and I'll be posting some updates on my shop. We're moving my big machines into the new building and all, and getting that shop organized. I'll post some pictures and everything to kind of keep y'all updated because we'll be out in the shop some of our classes doing some cuts and setup on the machines and all that. That's what I'm really hoping for and looking forward to. All right, everybody. Y'all have a good night.